What is up, everybody? Welcome back to this week's episode of the End of the Week. I have come to realize that over the last couple episodes, I have failed to introduce myself. So today, let's do that. My name is Morgan Houston, aka Whiskey Mo, the internet's least famous internet academic. Let's adjust our camera here because that was a little weird. But hey, thank you all as always for joining me. I'm very excited to be here. We've got a lot of really interesting topics. We've got two big ones and a couple of quick hits that we're going to do. We're going to talk today about some Chinese spying. We're going to talk about SOF forces Special Operations Forces and their call for access to certain types of software. And then a couple of quick hits about counterterrorism strategy and President Trump's most recent visit to China. Today, as we were recording it, he is coming back. So thank you, as always, for joining us. I hope that these are topics that you enjoy. But before we get into those, I got to do our call to action, as they call it in the content creation world. What is that? Please, as always, if you find value in this, gently caress that like button. It really does help. It's a steamroll effect, right? The more people click a like button, the more people will continue to see it. The YouTube and Spotify algorithms will present it to more people. Also, if you were to go ahead and click subscribe, that shows to those same algorithms that people like you would have some interest in seeing videos or listening to podcasts like this. Also, if you want to be notified when new videos are dropped on YouTube, you can go ahead and hit the notification bell. I know I've talked about it the last couple of weeks. I am about 3,000 words into the script for the architecture video that I am working on, architecture and ideology. I have the thumbnail done. Like, I'm really working on it. It's taken me a little bit longer than I thought. Let me tell you what, it is enjoyable to research things that you are not an expert in. I am currently off for the summer for both work. I'll still work, but I don't have students. I don't have any coursework this summer. And let me tell you what, diving into what is architecture, fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. If you're listening to this on Spotify, go ahead and click in the link in the description and you can find there links to my YouTube where I have other videos, long form videos that won't be posted to Spotify. Also, in that link, there is a link to Patreon. If you are interested, I would love for you to subscribe. I don't have any benefits yet right now. I'm working on them. It's one of those things that if we get more and more people, we can get it. But there are some things that I need when it comes to supporting this little studio that I have. And unfortunately, on a public servant salary, it gets really expensive. And I mean, I don't necessarily need it, but it will make the product a little bit better, I hope, for y'all, which is why I do this. So as always, thank you, though, for anything that you guys do. Anytime you click any of those buttons, anytime that you just watch the video and watch it for more than about 5 minutes, it really does help. I know you hear this all the time on YouTube. It wasn't until I have been doing this now for a couple of years in different venues throughout the various podcasts and YouTube channels that I've been a part of, that you can actually see it. Like, you can see that once a video or an episode reaches a certain point, it really steamrolls on it. And I do believe that this brings value to the average American, and I hope that you're getting value on it. So please do all those things. I really would appreciate it. But first off, let's talk about this really interesting story I heard. I heard it this morning on NPR today. As I'm recording this, is the 15th of May. This is for tomorrow. This will come out on the 16th of May. It's Saturday. The mayor of a small town, a small-ish town in the suburbs of LA, was recently arrested on accusations of spying and trying to create sympathy for China. It was one of the most interesting stories that I've heard of, and the reason I find it so interesting is it's something that I'm very interested in when it comes to like irregular warfare. When we talk about the impact of governments and intelligence agencies and all these kinds of things. Excuse me. So this is really going to be interesting. So the city is the city of Arcadia. Eileen Wang was the former mayor. She got elected as a city councilman at first and then eventually became the mayor. She agreed to a plea deal that has a sentence of up to 10 years. She was in collaboration with someone named Mike Soon. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. they ran a website that was really to reinforce positive views of China. And why this is so interesting is because it really demonstrates the distinction between how the Chinese Communist Party operates when it comes with its intelligence services, its military, its information warfare campaigns against something like the West, like the United States. So I talk about this thing that I've created. The concepts are not mine, but the kind of the visualization and the premise of it are. So what it is I call it the peace war spectrum. Right. So over here you have full and complete peace where everyone agrees on everything and there is no conflict at all kind. That is a hypothetical, never has happened in the state of the world, probably never will. And then over on the other side, we have the concept of full war, where it is declared war. Everyone's trying to attack everyone on that side. Everything in between there in that competition falls within the range of regular warfare. That includes things like economic policy, things like tariffs and most favored nation status, things like that, all the way up to things like intelligence operations, influence campaigns, proxy warfare, unconventional warfare, which is the assistance of partisans and rebel groups within a foreign nation. This kind of is more on this side over here, this where it's closer to the intelligence operations. It's not full conflict, but it's influence operations. I wrote a paper about this, which I will try and find a way to link in the thing below. China has always had a very active role in not only influencing other nations, but really also their own citizens within that nation. One of the things that they have done in the past is operated what we would call secret police stations through they're generally kind of pitched as diplomatic aid stations where they would help people with any kinds of the interesting diplomatic scenarios of a foreign national living in a country. And what they would do is they would threaten people and families to make sure that those people their citizens living in foreign countries would act at the behest of the Chinese Communist Party. And it seems like this is part of that, but instead of it being a Chinese national, it's an American. And what this is the Chinese view this as a whole of government approach, a whole of society approach when it comes to competition. Most Western nations, they don't necessarily always target civilians for influence operations, right? It's mostly about influencing key individuals who have a role that can change policies into the favor of that nation. Here, the attempt was so that you could get a large swath of the citizenry to have opinions that would benefit that of the Chinese and the Chinese Communist Party. And this could begin a kind of steamroll effect of creating more positive opinions and allow the creation of policies at the national level that would be more beneficial to China. And I find it super fascinating that the way that they operate, because it's just a different perspective on how we view the roles of government and the roles of intelligence communities within these spaces. And I think it's really important to understand these things as we continue to have to think about how we are going to operate within the near peer and or great power spaces, because as of right now, in my opinion, China is the only true near peer or even peer adversary that the U.S. could have. And despite the fact that we can get onto friendly terms with them, I believe that we can and we should, they will still always be a competitor economically, manufacturing, industry-wise, and that could lead to many other things. And we do have separate ideologies that are not necessarily compatible, but we could still be on friendly terms. I don't ever see, despite what science fiction would have you believe, that I just do not believe that China and the U.S. in their current forms could ever be true allies. So I'm interested to see what the sentencing will be for Eileen Wang, and it's going to be an interesting thing to follow up on now that this has been exposed. If there is any other activities that are happening in other small towns and other parts of the United States, I'm really interested. I think this is one of the things that we really need to pay attention to, and I have a feeling that this is going to be something that we're going to be seeing more and more of. Despite what people think, there is appeal for people outside of the U.S. to come to the United States, and that will always make it the United States susceptible to this kind of influence operations, these types of light espionage that are happening. So this is going to be really interesting. As always, if you want, I'll post the NPR story below. I'll post my paper below. You guys can read that as well. If I find it, I'll put that caveat out there. The second story, I read a really good article on Breaking Defense about one of the hearings. There's been a lot of Department of Defense hearings that have been happening on the Hill recently, and one of them was the four heads of the service special operations component. So you have USASOC, the U.S. Special Operations Command, Army Special Operations Command, AVSOC, the Air Force Special Operations Command, NAVSPEC War, Naval Special Warfare Command, and MARSOC, the Marine Special Operations Command. And one of the stories that popped out of this was a discussion about how, as some of these new technologies become more prevalent, one of the things that needs to be written into the contracts as they're writing is that that Special Operations Command needs to have access to any kind of proprietary software or coding that is happening, because they need to break it sometimes to make sure that things can work. And I find this interesting because it kind of ties into this really interesting battle that the average citizen is having right now with things like right to repair. So for those of you who don't know, one of the things that has been a constant battle within the civil side of courts right now has been the fight against technology companies, which includes some companies that you may not think of as tech companies, but is the right to repair. So like this right here, your cell phone, this is something that is really important. So it's, but the thing is up to a certain point, you had to go to Apple to fix it. Like this is an iPhone. You had to go to Apple to get it fixed. And if Apple had found out that some other person was repairing it, not using their parts, not being certified through their process, they could sue them. And that is problematic. This is also something that's very important when we talk about our agricultural base with things like John Deere. John Deere has made it very difficult for farmers to repair and update their systems. The new tractors and combines and things of that nature are very sophisticated, relying on GPS to make sure that your lines are straight, to make sure that you can get the most efficient and effective planting. And the only place that you could do that was at John Deere. And these are not cheap systems. So a new tractor can be six figures, a couple $100,000 for some of these. And they may not be able to afford to repair them. So in that case, one of the biggest concerns is now we have farmers that are bankrupt, and then we no longer have the mom and pops. That now it becomes a conglomerate. Now it becomes monopolized, and then that in and of itself is also a risk to agriculture, which is also a national security issue. But in that same vein, proprietary software, if you are operating, say, like a drone system, and you need to get into the guts of the controller or anything like that, and have understanding, trying to get access to the proprietary software that runs the hardware, that is really important, because one of the things that I think that is really difficult for people to understand about how this works is there's like a hierarchy of tactics, techniques, and procedures that goes from very specialized elite units down to the most basic conventional. Usually it starts, people, the technology and the tactics around them come to our special missions units at Joint Special Operations Command. They create things and tactics which then get passed down to what we call the white side soft Special Operations Forces, which is your Special Forces, Navy SEALs, Air Force Special Warfare, and those are then reinforced, enhanced, and expounded upon, and then eventually that hands down to your next level, your 82nd Airbornes, your 11th Airbornes, your more expeditionary conventional forces, and eventually it filters out to the rest of the conventional force, your 4th IDs, 7th Cavs, those kinds of things. So it's really important for our service members to have some of these abilities, because having a proprietary system that cannot be worked on is something that creates a hazard, because then eventually those things can be blackmailed and can be withheld and make systems so they don't operate. So I'm interested to see what kind of, this is one of those logistics things that I think that are really important that I don't think that people think about in the appropriations process, what that looks like. The average, I think, civilian would think that the appropriations bills and the appropriations and logistics processes are nothing more than spending money on the next big fighter aircraft or a new aircraft carrier or the next tank, those kinds of things. But it's these little details that can make or break our forces. So I'm really interested to see what this looks like. I'm really hoping that there can be some sort of solution with our defense industrial base to allow people to quote unquote break the systems to modify it and improve it. This is going to be a really interesting space that we're going to operate in. Next, we have a couple of quick hits. Within the last couple of weeks, the White House has dropped a new counterterrorism strategy, of which a strategy it is not. This is really disappointing in my mind. I tell you guys all the time that I'm going to be critical of the administration when necessary. I'm going to uplift and congratulate the administration when necessary as well. And unfortunately, it's just they seem to keep blundering and they keep putting their foot in their mouth. The new White House counterterrorism strategy reads like a political position paper, like it is just complaining about certain things. They list 3 counterterrorism targets that we should really be focusing on. Number 1 is narco trafficking, and then they call them narco terrorists. I don't think that's the proper term. The second one is legacy Islamic terrorists. That is actually a legitimate target. And then third is violent left-wing terrorists, including anti-fascists. Now, don't get me wrong. I heard a really great story about how when there's a rise in right-wing violence, there's always a rise in left-wing violence. I don't disagree with that. We've seen some of it. We've seen an increase in lone wolf left-wing violence recently. However, historically and up to now, the majority of domestic terrorist violence has always been coming from the right. And the fact that that has been removed from counterterrorism strategy is in and of itself disappointing. But the fact that you label anti-fascism as a terrorist thing is really, I hope, not telling. I believe it is, but I hope it's not telling. Anti-fascism, that's what we should be. Like, Americans should be anti-fascist. We went to a whole world war to fight fascism. But also, I'm not surprised at the contents of this new counterterrorism strategy. The counterterrorism guru, whatever you want to call him, at the White House is Seb Gorka, who, in my opinion, is a joke. He wouldn't know good counterterrorism policy if someone walked up to him and hit him with it. But he's a really good promoter, so I believe this is part of the reason why he has been placed in that. And he does politically align with the current administration. It's one of those things where, again, I'm disappointed in it. I don't think it's a serious strategy. But go ahead and read it. It's 16 pages. It's not much of anything. Next, the White House the president just recently came back, or is on his way back from China as of recording. He spent a couple of days talking with President Xi. There was a lot of discussions and a lot of things that I am concerned about. I will leave that analysis to someone who is better than I. I am not an Asia expert, especially not a China expert. There are a lot of those good and going around, so I would highly recommend that. There's a lot of good ones at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, the Center for Foreign Policy, the Council on Foreign Relations. Wow, my brain, you can tell it's the end of the semester, right? There's a lot out there. Anything from Johns Hopkins, SAIS, the School of Advanced and International Studies is really good. But one of the things that came out of this that I was really interested about is that there was light discussions around soybeans and soybean manufacturers up until the current administration reascended into power. China was the number one soybean purchaser of American soybean farms, and enough so that it was a fairly substantial amount that farmers could actually, and not just like massive conglomerates, but actual local individual farmers could make a fantastic living on being a soybean farmer. And it is now something, because of tariffs, reciprocal tariffs, because of political leaning left and right. Now China buys the majority of their soybeans from Brazil. And while there was some lip service paid to increasing soybean purchases from China Most of the farmers at this point are now saying, I don't want lip service. I want action. I heard this again. If you guys can't gather, every day when I drive into and out of work, I'm generally listening to NPR, and National Public Radio is a fantastic source. I find them to be one of the best unbalanced sources of news, unbiased sources of news. But that is something that I think that we need to adjust our industrial base and our agricultural policies on. And this is the danger of just unilaterally placing things like tariffs and creating economic policy without consulting experts, without consulting Congress, all of these things. So we're starting to see some of the repercussions of some of last year's policy decisions. And unfortunately, it has hurt some people. And I'm hoping that this is really important because our economy and our agricultural base is part of our national security. So these are things that we need to make sure that are steady and strong. So if we don't have that, it is really problematic. But that is it for this episode of The End of the Week. As always, I've been very excited to bring this to you. I really enjoyed this week's news. There's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. And I hope that you found some value in this. I hope that you learned something new. And if that's the case, please, I ask, as always, gently caress that like button. Let YouTube and Spotify know that you enjoyed this episode, that you learned something, that people like you would be interested in it. Go ahead, please. Click that subscribe button. That really does help. The bigger audience that does that helps increase my visibility to people just like you. And I know if you're listening to this, you're part of my people, NatSec nerds. I love y'all. That's what I should start with. Welcome up, NatSec nerds. We'll think about that. But also, if you want to know, if you are on YouTube, when my new videos will drop, especially the stuff that is not this podcast, please go ahead and hit the notification bell. Very excited that you are here with us. I hope that all of you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you again at the end of the week.